The prophets were unique individuals, a part of the people of God. In many ways, they were the spiritual leaders of Israel. The kings of Israel were mostly corrupt after David, and even before David, Saul. As we have seen, the wicked pair of Ahab and Jezebel during Elijah's time as a prophet. Elijah was God's intercessor who kept Israel from turning completely away from the Lord. Even the priests, who should have been religious leaders, were often also corrupt, only to lead the nation away. Elijah and Elisha, along with Nathan, were unique prophets. For you see, they do not have a book written in their name. And yet, their influence was every bit as great as Isaiah and Jeremiah. John the Baptist was compared to Elijah, and we know how Jesus felt about John. Elijah and Elisha were grassroots evangelists who proclaimed God's message through their actions in the power of God. We cannot underestimate their influence as God's prophet at a very most difficult time in Israel's history. I had the privilege of attending 2 Billy Graham crusades, where there was several hundred ministers that came together, as well as from many different denominations. One was in Oakland, California, and the other was in Oklahoma City. And I left both impressed with the scope of influence for Christ that the crusade ministry and the whole Billy Graham organization influenced in our world. There was literally thousands of people working together in prayer, touching another thousands of people for the Lord. Literally, God was working in them. In a difficult time in our world and our nation's history, Reverend Ray stood the gap as God's representative to millions. As our nation becomes increasingly secular and pagan, we need someone to take his place as Elisha takes Elijah's place. Actually, every Christian family, every church, big and small, has a sphere of influence for Christ in the world. When you put us all together as a community, we have a significant impact in our world. God needs his people to take the stand in prayer and spirit-filled action in a world fighting against him. And we talked about that in Sunday school, how that we needed to take the stand. And God needs his people to take that stand. Thankfully, God has always had a remnant, those who have stood in the intercessory gap for him. In many ways, the prophets, like Elijah and Elisha, represented that remnant. It has been estimated that John Wesley and the Methodist group saved England from being consumed in its own evil. They stood the gap. They were not even officially a church, just a society. But God used them, led by Wesley, to grassroots changes in their world. We cannot underestimate that. So as we follow the continuing story of Elijah, which Pastor Eric has been bringing us in 1st and 2nd Kings, we need to be aware of the crucial importance in the salvation history of God in Christ that the prophets like Elijah filled. One man in his book on the prophets, Abraham Herschel, said about the prophets, in the presence of the people, he takes the part of God. God is the focal point of his thought, and the world is seen as reflected in God. Indeed, the main task of prophetic thinking is to bring the world into divine purpose. Now, we are introduced to Elijah as Elijah's successor. In 1 Kings 19, verse 16, God tells Elijah to anoint Elisha to succeed him. This was God's doing, not Elijah. Unlike the kings and priests who followed a family line, God chose his prophets to represent him. As he called Isaiah in the 6th chapter of Isaiah, Isaiah says, "Then I heard the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go with me? And I said, here am I, send me." And then also in Jeremiah, in the 1st chapter, Jeremiah says, God said to him, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." It was such a sacred calling that God had to call his people purposely in the Lord. Now, we're not told much about Elisha before his calling to be a prophet. In chapter 19, verse 19, our introduction to Elijah was that he must have been a farmer of some success. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Not too many farmers had that kind of stuff. But we are not told of his background, of why God called him to be a major prophet, taking Elijah's place. We are not told if this time was the first meeting between Elijah and Elisha. We are told that while Elisha was plowing, Elijah came up to him and threw his cloak over him, which represents his giving his power to Elisha. Did Elisha see this coming? Or was it a complete surprise to him? Had God been speaking to him, preparing him for this occasion? How familiar was Elisha with Elijah as the man of God? All these questions are left unanswered. But the one thing we do know is that Elisha's response was immediate to Elijah and to his call. In 1 Kings 19, 20 and 21, we are told that Elisha left and ran to Elijah and with preparation to follow him. God honors those who are most surrendered to him. God chooses those not primarily because of their ability and their gifts, but because of their openness and their commitment. Not their ability, but their availability. God chooses them. Surely this was true of Elisha and his calling to be God's special prophet. Elisha asked permission to say perhaps his last goodbye to his mother and father. Then he took his oxen and slaughtered them, burned up the wooden plow and all of it that he had, and cooked a meal for the people. He literally burned up his past, leaving everything behind, including his parents, to follow Elijah and ultimately God and the Lord's call upon his life. Obviously, God's call on Elijah and Elisha as prophets is not God's purpose for everyone. But the question still must be asked, are we willing to make the same surrenders to God that he may fulfill his purpose in our lives as well? God called Abraham to leave his fatherhood and father's land to bring forth a new nation of God's people in Genesis 12. God called Simon Peter, Andrew, James, and John from their fishing nets with their catch still full in the nets. And they left to follow him immediately. Elisha was in good company as he followed Elijah that day. It came to me, we're not only supposed to support our missionaries, but we are to have the same commitment that they have to God and his word. The second chapter of 2 Kings continues the story of Elisha, faithful following of the Lord. And I'd like to read some of that to you today. It says, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up in heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah called to Elisha, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elijah said, "As surely as the Lord lives and you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of the people at Bethel came out to Elijah and asked, "Do you not know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elijah replied, "so be quiet." Then Elijah said, "Stay here, Elisha, the Lord has sent me to Jericho." And then he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, "Did you not know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," he replied, "so be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, even at distancing them, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Then Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it, and the waters divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire, horses of fire, appeared and separated the two of them. And Elisha went up to the heavens in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and the horsemen of Israel." And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment and tore it in two. Elisha then picked up Elijah's cloak, that had fallen from him, and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. He took the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and struck the waters with it, saying, "Where now is the God of Elijah?" he asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and to the left, and he crossed over. We are told that Elijah's time on earth was soon to be over, as a whirlwind was being prepared to take him to heaven. Elisha followed Elijah to Bethel, and then to Jericho, and then to Jordan, with his promise, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." At the Jordan, Elijah takes off his cloak or mantle, rolls it up, and strikes the water. And the water is divided. The power of God was there in Elijah. At this point, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" And Elisha's reply was, "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit, Lord." Elijah confesses how difficult this request is. But if Elijah is there when he is taken to heaven, Elisha's request will be given. Then as the two are talking, suddenly a chariot of fire comes to him, and he is taken up to heaven, and Elisha sees him no more. My thought was, what a divine, what a spectacular accident that Elijah made with God's help. Once again, though, we see Elisha's dedication to the task ahead of him. First of all, when God calls or leads, it is our responsibility to take that call seriously and follow God's lead. That Elisha did with devotion to God's servant Elijah, as in preparation with God to be Elijah's successor. There was no way Elisha was going to be left behind and miss the blessing that the task of God was to give him. He was not, with God's enabling, going to ever have to look back on his life in remorse for failing to step up when God gave him the opportunity to accomplish and purpose in Elijah. He was rewarded for his faithfulness, so when Elijah's transportation to heaven arrived, Elisha was there to take Elijah's mantle. When I was in college, this is even before Janet and I were born, time out. Before we were married. I just want to see if you're awake. I would go to the college church to find a place to pray, because on the college campus you can't find any place to be alone. And so I would go to the church that was on the campus. And one day, while I was praying in the Sunday school room, I met the church's custodian. And we got to talking, and when he found out that I was a ministerial student, he told me his tragic story. He said God called him to the ministry, and God had opened up the door for him to go, but he refused to go. And it was several years later before he finally got back to the Lord. And he said, my one regret in life was I didn't answer God's call. And it's bothered me plainly blessing that was his. Elisha's request for a double portion was not a selfish one, taking advantage of Elijah's departure. It was the request of the firstborn male to carry on the father's work and legacy. Elisha was not the elder son, wasn't related that way, but he was the one appointed to take Elisha's place. And Elisha needed a double portion of God's Spirit if he was ever going to accomplish this great task that God had given him. For as great as all the miracles that Elijah had performed, not one of them was an act of magic, but they were all in the power of God's Spirit that was mighty upon Elijah. Elisha would need that same divine power to be upon him in double portion, for Elisha was taking on a great responsibility that only God could fulfill in his life. You might have noticed in the New Testament reading that Patty read to us from Acts 3 that the people were starting to look at Peter and John for this great miracle, and immediately they said, no, don't look at us. This was done in the power of God. This was done in God's great ministry. We too need a double portion of God's Holy Spirit to live the Christian life. For being a Christian is a great responsibility that only Christ can fulfill within us through the Holy Spirit. We also need a double portion that we might pray and serve God in power to reach our world around us. One of the feelings that I've had in all that's been going on in our world, and I've heard other people talk about it too, is this feeling of helplessness. With everything that's going on in such large proportions, not only in our nation or our city, but around the world, and everything that's happening, you just feel so helpless. What can you do? And I would pray for God's Spirit, His double portion to come on my life, that I might be able to pray in power, and I might be able to reach out and do what God would have me to do. But with power, there must also be integrity and love. The gifts of the Spirit must be matched with the fruit of the Spirit. And what I've noticed with so many Pentecostals is they don't want anything to do with the fruit of the Spirit. They're just interested in the gifts of the Spirit. But they both must come together. Elisha picked up Elijah's mantle or his cloak and struck the water with the burning question, where is the God of Elijah? And with that, the waters parted, just like they had did with Elijah. And the group of prophets that were there proclaimed, the spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha. And then they bowed before him. And we need that power too. But you see, power in the wrong hands can be used for great evil and injustice. But God, in his holy love and integrity, only shares that kind of power with those like Elijah and Elisha and Paul and Peter, men and women who have been transformed by God's love through God's Spirit within. And God desires his prophet and his people to act in ways of justice, in loving kindness, showing mercy, and walking humbly with the Lord. I'm going to give you in closing a illustration that you may think is rather silly, but I'm going to give it anyway. I'm thinking about a person, could be a man or a woman, young, old, middle-aged, whose car is about to run out of gas. And this person gets to thinking, I'm tired of the car manufacturers telling me what to do about my car. I'm tired of this owner's manual that they give me that tells me what I can do or what I can't do with my car. Hey, I own the car, not them. And I'm through listening to these mechanics. I'm going to put in my car whatever I want to put in it. Because it's all a conspiracy between the car manufacturers and the mechanics with their owner's manual, with the oil companies and the gas stations to get me to put gasoline in my car because it's just all a conspiracy. If I want to put water in my tank, I'm going to do that. In fact, it's a lot cheaper. If I want to put Gatorade or milk in my tank, I'll go ahead and do that. That's a little more expensive. And by the way, don't try this at home. And you say, what a silly illustration. Nobody is that dumb that they would put anything in their tank except what was required. Hey, it's called a gas tank because that's what it is, and that's what's to go in it. And anybody knows that the car manufacturer knows how much what is needed in that car than anybody else. Silly illustration. But you want to know something? That same thing is done every day by people not about their cars, but their life, their relationships, their salvation, their eternal destiny. Because they say, I'm not going to listen to God. It's my life. I'm going to do whatever I want with it. I don't care what God says. He doesn't own me. It's my life. And I'm going to do and fill myself with whatever I want to do. Forgive me for saying this, but talking about dumb. And they say, I'm not going to listen to the Bible. It doesn't apply to me. I'm not going to listen to this Bible that says all kinds of things. And they don't apply to my life. I'm going to go my own way. And the ministers, there is absolutely no way I'm going to be listening to any minister. They're all in conspiracy. God and the Bible and ministers, they're all in conspiracy together to get me. Well, there may be some truth to that. in this illustration. God is the car God is the car manufacturer. As the creator of life, God, who designed us and made us, he is like that car manufacturer. And he knows best what we need. And the Bible is like the owner's manual, which gives us the instructions for life. And the mechanic, I got to thinking about that. I think the mechanic is Jesus. Only Jesus can make our lives right. Only Jesus can fill our lives and fix our lives and bring us back to God. But you know, the most important part of that, I guess, is the fuel. What is the fuel? Fuel is the Holy Spirit. Because God designed our lives to only be filled with himself, with his Spirit in our lives. Nothing else will work. Nothing else will really touch us. Only his Spirit within. On the day of Pentecost, which was just last Sunday, Peter started his sermon in this way. These people are not drunk as you suppose. It is only 9 in the morning. No, this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit on all people. And we're told that in the day of Pentecost, 120 people came together in unison and were filled together. Jeremiah says, I will put my law on their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. We need God's Spirit in us. We need a double portion like Elisha prayed for. We need his Spirit to fill our lives, to come upon us, to be an influence, not just in ourselves, but with all those around us. We need the Lord to fill us. We're going to close by singing number 293, and I guess it's on the board. And it's a song that tells the story that we just looked at.